The ground under the feet of traitors in the occupied territories continues to burn, and quite literally. Today, an explosion occurred in Sevastopol. According to preliminary information, punishment has caught up with the former commander of the Ukrainian submarine Zaporizhzhia, Robert Shagiev. After the occupation of Crimea in 2014, he betrayed his oath and defected to Russia. We must note that there is currently no official confirmation of his death. However, there is real panic in occupied Crimea. My colleagues have gathered everything known about the explosive morning in Sevastopol and about who could have triggered the detonator.
Temporarily occupied Sevastopol. Morning. A loud explosion rang out in the middle of a residential area. A car blew up while in motion. According to eyewitnesses, the blast was so powerful that windows in nearby buildings were blown out and car alarms went off in vehicles parked nearby. The occupation authorities immediately ordered the scene to be cordoned off and announced another alleged terrorist attack. Later, details began to emerge regarding the person who was in the car. According to preliminary data, it is 50-year-old Robert Shagiev. According to the Mirotvorets Center, in the past, he was a Ukrainian serviceman and commanded the Zaporizhzhia submarine. During the annexation of Crimea in 2014, Shagiev betrayed his military oath and defected to the side of the occupiers. In Russia, he continued his service in the aggressor's Black Sea Fleet.
He was responsible for the implementation and planning of tasks directly for the submarine command. So, in fact, he continued to serve in this capacity directly as part of Russia's Black Sea Fleet.
The Russian FSB has already reported the detention of a suspect in the bombing. According to propaganda resources, this is a Sochi resident, Margarita Reut. Security forces claim that it was she who planted the explosives. It is known that in July 2025, Reut was fined under the article regarding the so-called discrediting of the Russian army. The basis for this was an incident on a train, where she reacted emotionally to a Ukrainian drone attack on a station in the Rostov region. Furthermore, on her social media, the woman repeatedly publicly condemned the war against Ukraine.
We are intensifying special operations in occupied Crimea. The goal, of course, is the demilitarization of the peninsula and the reduction of the military presence there. You can see that the defense forces have made significant progress in that Russia is now effectively squeezed directly to Novorossiysk, but even there it does not feel safe.
The elimination of yet another traitor to Ukraine has become further evidence that Russian ranks, positions, and promises of a comfortable life in occupied Crimea do not guarantee safety when the time for reckoning comes. Yehor Babak, Marathon, United News.
It is also restless in Russia's Bashkortostan today. 1,300 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, fires broke out at the Gazpromneft Salavat oil refinery following a drone attack. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the Gazprom plant is one of Russia's largest oil refining and petrochemical complexes. The enterprise produces gasoline, diesel fuel, fuel oil, and other petrochemical products, including those used to supply the Russian army. Its raw material processing capacity reaches 10 million tons per year. Also, monitoring channels are reporting a fire on the territory of a large Wildberries warehouse and distribution complex in the Chekmagushevsky district of Bashkortostan. This facility was used for storing, sorting, and further distributing dual-use goods. 2 attacks during the day in the Odesa region. Civilian passenger trains are under attack. 2 people have died and 1 child has been injured. We will ask our correspondent, Andriy Anastasov, for all the details live from Odesa. Andriy, hello. What is known about the consequences of the attack so far?
Hello, Alexei. The first shelling occurred around 7 o'clock in the morning in the Berezivka district. This is the northeastern part of the Odesa region. It was there that an enemy jet drone of the Shahed type attacked a passenger train traveling from Dnipro to Odesa. At that moment, the train was just approaching the nearest station for the safe evacuation of passengers as an air raid alert was sounding. Then, as reported by Ukrzaliznytsia, there was a targeted strike on the train's locomotive. And President Volodymyr Zelenskyy later noted that whoever was operating the drone definitely knew that the target was completely civilian. And as a result of this shelling, a fire broke out and 2 people who were in the locomotive died on the spot. And next, I suggest listening to a comment from a representative of the Odesa Region Prosecutor's Office.
Due to the shelling, 2 civilians died on the spot, a 50-year-old train driver and his 41-year-old assistant. Law enforcement officers are currently on the scene documenting the war crime. Under the procedural guidance of the Odesa Regional Prosecutor's Office, a pre-trial investigation has been initiated into the facts of war crimes that caused the deaths of people.
At the time the enemy attacked the train, there were 340 passengers on board, including about 70 children. None of them were injured. Emergency services and SES rescuers immediately organized the evacuation of the people and transported them to Odesa by bus. And many passengers were traveling from Dnipro to the seaside city specifically for a vacation. The people we spoke with recall waking up at 7 in the morning to the train shaking from an explosion. An emergency evacuation began. Next, I suggest we listen to what they have to say.
We took the most valuable things, a phone, a bag with money, and ran in whatever we were wearing. We somehow jumped off the train. I don't remember that moment. We jumped right onto the tracks where there were huge stones. We ran across the grass. I fell on the grass, bruised my knee, but everything is fine. We ran to hide under the trees because we thought a Shahed was flying again, which would see people and strike there too.
Among the passengers, there were no casualties or people with any fractures. We made it, everything is fine. I felt sorry for the children. I mean, there were infants. And when the evacuation to the buses was taking place, unfortunately, the adults didn't understand that children needed to be evacuated first, and they pushed their way to the front.
And a little later, in the same Berezivka district, the enemy carried out another attack on railway infrastructure. As a result of the shelling, a diesel locomotive caught fire. It was just performing shunting operations to ensure the movement of other trains. This time, rescuers had to evacuate over 500 people to Odesa. And as reported by the regional military administration, one child was injured as a result of this attack. That is the news from the Odesa region. Oleksiy, I'm handing it over to you.
Andriy, thank you. Take care of yourself. Andriy Anastasov was with us live regarding the consequences of the enemy attack on civilian trains in the Odesa region. Meanwhile, the enemy is subjecting us not only to transport terror, but also to food terror. After the Russians carried out one of the largest scale attacks on the warehouses of major retail chains, shelves in certain supermarkets became partially empty, and there was talk in society about shortages and price hikes. My colleague Olena Loginova tried to separate emotions from facts. She did indeed see empty shelves, but such a shortage is not profitable for the stores themselves either. So what do we have now, and what should we expect next? Only professional assessments and forecasts. Watch in the report.
A dark day for Ukrainian retail. In just one night, the enemy destroyed tens of thousands of square meters of warehouses. And as a result, empty shelves in supermarkets.
We are in shock from what is happening because, well, it's inconvenient. Yes, we are accustomed to having everything available.
Will there be a shortage, and should we expect food prices to rise? On the night of August 5th, the enemy launched one of the most massive combined strikes on the Kyiv region. The main target was food warehouses and large distribution centers of retailers. Huge storage facilities and logistics hubs of Ukrainian and international companies were destroyed and damaged.
August 5th was a very difficult day for retail. We call it a black day, a day for retail. And in general, since July 1st, more than 400,000 square meters of logistics real estate, including retail, have been destroyed. Therefore, the situation is extremely difficult, and while it is not yet critical, it is very complex. And as of today, it is under control.
Photos and videos of empty shelves in capital city supermarkets have started appearing on social media. We are in one of these stores. At first glance, there is plenty of everything here, but there is still a certain shortage of products. Here we can see empty shelves. Previously, fresh vegetables and greens were kept here. And right here, there used to be bananas. For now, we can see that there are none left. We also observe a certain shortage of domestically produced vegetables. Some empty crates.
Yes, of course, it's noticeable, especially in the fish department. There are practically no vegetables or fruits. In another chain, the shelves are also completely empty.
First and foremost, the vegetables disappeared. Vegetables, fruits, and also meat. I am keeping myself in check so as not to stock up too much.
Is Ukraine facing a food shortage in the near future? And what is also important, will prices rise again? We will look for answers to these questions together with economist Andriy Novak. Mr. Andriy, we are currently with you at one of the Kiev markets. We can see that trade is in full swing here. Vegetables, fruits, full shelves, but in some supermarkets we do see a shortage and some empty shelves. How can this be explained, and is it really worth worrying about?
You know, the economy is such a thing that a vacuum never lasts. If some shelves have emptied out a little bit somewhere, it means that in another place there will be more on the same shelves. Well, in particular, we are currently at a market, one of the Kiev markets, and we can see that there is no shortage anywhere near.
There are indeed a lot of people at the market, even more than usual. Queues for vegetables and fruits.
Let's take a look. It's very interesting. A nice place. Tomatoes. I love these plum tomatoes. How much are they, the plum ones?
The homemade plum tomatoes are 75 hryvnias. These aren't field-grown plum tomatoes. These are homemade plum tomatoes.
I must say, 4 plum tomatoes and yellow ones at that. The price is very good. Is that because there are problems in the supermarkets, right? And you are replacing them now.
The panic was only for the first 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. Now the panic has died down and it's gone. Everything is fine. I haven't heard people running around here in a frenzy, shouting, "Oh God, there's nothing left! Oh God, there's nothing left!"
An expert also reassures us. He is convinced no global food shortage threatens us. Empty shelves in supermarkets are a temporary phenomenon.
Firstly, it's only in certain supermarkets and only in those where their warehouse was hit. Of course, if the products that were stored there, which were supposed to go to a specific store tomorrow, were hit, they didn't arrive there. But that doesn't mean there is a shortage of the products themselves. It just means logistics need to be reconfigured and supplies need to be brought in from another warehouse.
However, it wasn't just vegetables that were hit by the enemy strike. The Retailers Association explains that during the attacks, the enemy damaged expensive equipment. There was simply nowhere left to store raw meat or dairy products.
It's not just a warehouse, right? It's a specific building that houses a lot of technological equipment and many IT solutions. And these complexes also included refrigeration equipment, which is precisely used for storing fresh produce. Therefore, we are currently seeing a temporary phenomenon where some stores are out of certain categories of goods.
In one of the supermarket chains whose warehouses were destroyed, they confirmed to us, even despite the damage and losses, there will be no shortage.
The losses are truly enormous. And to put it bluntly, the damages are measured in billions of hryvnias. It's not just walls that were destroyed, it's expensive technical equipment, refrigeration units, and significant volumes of inventory. A full audit is currently underway. We needed time to reconfigure routes and find alternative storage and supply points. In fact, all the necessary products for daily life were and are available. There was no systemic shortage, and none is currently forecast.
Large retail chains faced a challenge to reformat logistics routes without using huge warehouses, that is, direct deliveries to retail outlets bypassing the destroyed center. And these are additional costs.
We are creating a new system right now. We have already moved over 2/3 of our essential product range to new routes. We are moving away from the vulnerable model of a single large mega hub. Instead, the company is switching to a cluster model with a network of autonomous, interchangeable warehouses. And this will allow us to truly diversify risks and ensure supply stability under any conditions.
We can call this decentralization, when many suppliers, manufacturers, and distributors will deliver their goods directly to the stores. Now, these supply chains will inevitably face significant additional costs associated with storing goods, such as inventory management and warehousing, while also incurring substantial expenses for maintaining more complex logistics routes and distribution channels. And if previously one truck drove from the central warehouse to the store, now imagine that, for example, 10, 15, 20 trucks from suppliers will drive there instead. And of course, this affects the price.
In other words, price increases are unavoidable. At the same time, the expert emphasizes, for now, the seasonal factor is working in the consumer's favor. There are plenty of vegetables and fruits, so prices will most likely remain stable until autumn. But after that, price increases will likely be inevitable.
In other words, both the producer and the merchant are, in any case, forced to partially pass on direct economic losses to the price of their products. As of today, I expect an overall price increase for food products across various categories of 5 to 15%, no more.
Both experts and retailers agree that the scenario for how events will unfold in the food market in Ukraine depends significantly on the enemy's actions. Will Russia abandon its tactics of food terror, or will it continue to attack food warehouses with missiles and drones? Olena Loginova, Volodymyr Diedov, Podrobici, Inter TV channel, United News Marathon.
There are no grounds to talk about a food crisis in Ukraine, the Center for Countering Disinformation emphasized. And inciting panic is also a component of Russia's hybrid war against Ukraine. The center emphasizes that the enemy is trying to force Ukrainians to buy food in reserve, artificially creating a rush. At the same time, the CCD assures that problems with empty shelves in stores are a temporary phenomenon and there will be no food shortage in Ukraine. But what is definitely in short supply in Ukraine are missiles capable of shooting down Russian ballistics. In an interview with CNN, the president of Ukraine noted, and I quote, "I am asking our American partners to sell us 5% of the missiles they have in stock. If the Americans sell us 5% of the PAC-3 interceptors, we will get through the winter and save people's lives. If they can sell us 10%, we will destroy all the Russians' ballistic missiles." End of quote. Kyiv is ready to produce anti-ballistic missiles itself, but again, this requires licenses from the USA. However, across the ocean, there is nothing but doubt and contradiction. Are there alternative ways to repel massive missile strikes? Alexander Mozheichuk has studied all possible options.
Russia has changed its air attack tactics and is betting on ballistics, military analysts note. While the pace of supplying missiles for Patriot systems to Ukraine has slowed, the enemy is trying to take advantage of this temporary window of opportunity and is ramping up the production of corresponding ammunition. Volodymyr Zelenskyy continues to urge Western partners to provide Kyiv with Patriot missiles, and he even explains the refusal or delay in doing so as an attempt to pressure Ukraine.
If the United States sells us 5% of their Patriot missiles, we will survive the winter and save people's lives. If they can sell us 10%, we will destroy all of Russia's ballistic missiles. Currently, Ukraine has only 1% of the necessary supply.
Bloomberg writes, Western allies may betray Ukraine again at a critical moment and thus waste the chance to stop the war. According to the publication, the pressure on Russia in recent months was indeed capable of pushing the Kremlin toward negotiations. However, due to the conflict in the Middle East, arms supplies to Ukraine have slowed down.
Kyiv is already working on creating its own missile defense system for protection, as well as its own ballistic missiles for retaliatory strikes against Russia. Once again, there is a discrepancy in the timelines between Ukraine's supply chains and battlefield needs, as the development and production of such weapons can take years, while the escalation of Russian attacks is happening right now.
According to the main Directorate of Intelligence, Russia has suspended the production of Kinjal and Ka-32 missiles and has reoriented its efforts, as well as redirected materials toward the production of ballistic missiles. In July, the aggressor country produced 65 Iskander M ballistic missiles, against a plan of 60. So there are few ways left to overcome the problem. These are strikes on enterprises that produce components for ballistic missiles. This is exactly what Ukraine has been trying to do for a long time with varying degrees of success.
Worldwide, approximately as many anti-missiles are produced per month as Russia produces Iskander-class ballistic missiles. There is no other option worldwide than to destroy the Russians' ability to produce and their ability to store and launch them. There are no other missile-related options. What other options could there be? Well, there are two options here. Either we shoot down what is flying, but that is 3 times more expensive. Well, let's see. A Tomahawk costs less than a PAC-3, an anti-aircraft missile. President Trump keeps saying that even politics should be approached from a business perspective. Well, the business is very simple. It is significantly more cost-effective to destroy the entire production facility with a single Tomahawk missile, rather than having to launch 2 or 3 interceptors when a Russian Iskander is already in the air and heading toward his target.
Another option for dealing with Russian ballistics is attacking the launch systems immediately before the launch itself. Commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces Robert Brovdi, call sign Magyar, believes that Russia is currently capable of launching a salvo of 77 ballistic missiles and plans to scale it up to 200 units at a time.
Even if they manage to carry out only half of that, all of it will be flying at us. The only way to reduce this number is to strike all the facilities involved in the production of these missiles.
The BBC Ukrainian service is attempting to answer the question of whether Ukraine can destroy ballistic missile launchers in an analytical article of the same name. The launch of Iskander M ballistic missiles looks like this in practice. A column of 6 vehicles drives out to the launch positions. They are positioned at the launch point at a distance of 100 to 200 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Deployment of the crew and loading takes 15 to 20 minutes. Then a salvo of 2 ballistic missiles is fired with an interval of a minute or 2 and the vehicle leaves the area.
To manage to attack Russian operational tactical missile systems, Ukraine must receive information from intelligence in advance about exactly where the launch site is, or possess weapons that can instantly strike enemy equipment within 10 to 15 minutes of their detection. Ukraine receives all information about launches or preparations for ballistic launches from its partners. In such a situation, the only weaponry that can manage to strike an Iskander launcher in time is ultra-fast ballistic missiles capable of hitting targets at a range of 200 to 500 kilometers. Ukraine has 2 such variants in development, the Sapsan and FP9 systems.
Large-scale hunting for Russian ballistic missiles is currently an extremely difficult task for Ukraine, the BBC concludes. Military analyst Oleksiy Hetman notes, it is very difficult to intercept a launcher before it fires, because it moves while camouflaged and under radio silence. From space, this system looks like thousands of trucks moving along Russian roads. So the most priority, most effective and cheapest option is to destroy the factories where the corresponding missiles are produced.
The Russians built production plants. Well, they had this kind of gigantomania in the Soviet Union. Everything was made big, everything was voluminous, and the area of these factories is very large. These are hectares, tens of hectares, and if we miss workshop number 3 and hit workshop number 5, it's no big deal. We will still stop or suspend this factory. Therefore, I am confident that with this ballistics, we shouldn't expect to be shooting at the launchers. Well, what's the point? Well, why? We need to shut off the sources. It's not about catching drops from a fountain, but about shutting off the sources where this water is coming from. And this water comes from production.
In conditions of a Patriot shortage, Ukraine, together with European countries, is developing its own anti-ballistic program, Freya, an integrated air and missile defense system with a focus on intercepting missiles. The first combat use of Ukrainian ballistics is expected at the beginning of this autumn. Alexander Muzhichuk, details, Inter-TV channel, Marathon United News.
Meanwhile, the European Union is calling on the leadership of EU member states to transfer missiles for Patriot systems to Ukraine from their own stockpiles. Strengthening Ukrainian air defense is called an unconditional priority in Brussels. This was stated by European Commission spokesperson Anita Hipper at a briefing.
We have always emphasized the need for greater support for Ukraine. It urgently needs strengthened air defense, and this remains a priority. That is precisely why the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs has called on all member states that have stockpiles to provide them to Ukraine. Kaja Kallas is in regular contact with EU member states to encourage them to increase their commitments to supplying ammunition to Ukraine.
Next, about hybrid attacks abroad and, importantly, how the world is responding to them. Unknown drones were flying over the territory of one of Australia's air bases, where the latest F-35 fighter jets are stationed. This was reported by the local TV channel 9 News Australia. The country's armed forces do not yet know who was operating the drones or for what purpose they were in the no-fly zones. At the same time, the drones were not destroyed. The airbase commanders were only ordered to lower the blinds on the windows to prevent a possible leak of information. Local police are investigating the incident. In Germany, they are still investigating the incident at Leipzig airport and wondering what it actually was, a hybrid attack or a direct assault. A week ago, drones with explosives attacked a Ukrainian transport plane on the territory of one of Europe's largest cargo airports. Who could have been behind the sabotage? Why was a Ukrainian and specifically targeted? And what do the explosive packages that Russian intelligence agents were sending across Europe 2 years ago have to do with this? Tetiana Lohunova has investigated all the details of this case, which seems complicated to the Germans.
One step away from catastrophe, German experts are convinced an explosion at the Leipzig-Halle airport was avoided by a miracle. In the weeks since the incident, they have analyzed footage from all available surveillance cameras, inspected the aircraft and every centimeter of the airport grounds, and reconstructed the following picture. The evening of August 4th, an unknown drone flies into the airport territory, approaches a Ukrainian Antonov 124 aircraft parked on the airfield and crashes into its wing, which contains fuel tanks inside. At that moment, they were being filled with aviation gas.
Upon impact, the drone bounces off and falls to the ground while the improvised explosive device attached to it flies a few meters away. The detonator does not go off. A few hours later, one of the airport employees accidentally finds the drone.
All questions regarding the explosives, the drone's design, and of course who was involved in launching it are currently under investigation. Any speculation on this topic could be misleading. The priority right now is to investigate in all directions.
German official authorities are not commenting on the progress of the case, unlike the media. Journalists managed to find out that the perpetrators had hidden the explosives, nearly a kilogram of powerful plastic substance, in an ordinary tin can. The drone itself was modified. A camera, an additional battery, a router, and 2 SIM cards were installed to control it via the mobile network. Investigators found an antenna on a tree near the attack site, likely for signal amplification, and a DNA sample on the drone itself. It matches the trace found after the fire at the DHL logistics center at the same airport. 2 years ago, a package with an incendiary device caught fire there. Currently, a trial is underway in Lithuania for suspects involved in sending this and other similar parcels. There are 5 men in the dock who were likely recruited by Russian military intelligence. The Germans also see foreign interference in the attack on a Ukrainian plane at Leipzig airport.
Of course, we do not rule out the involvement of foreign forces. This version is being investigated. As Minister of the Interior, I cannot say more at this moment. But I have seen this drone, this explosive device, and I can confidently state that the attack was not prepared by amateurs. Everything was executed extremely professionally.
Experts are naming these foreign forces. The handwriting is Kremlin style. The goal is intimidation and undermining support for Ukraine.
The goal of such hybrid operations is to destabilize political support for Ukraine. In Russia, they understand perfectly well how important German aid is for Kyiv. At the same time, Moscow knows that Germans themselves demonstrate different views on this issue. There are people who are skeptical, and the Kremlin aims to strengthen their positions.
And also to raise the stakes in the confrontation with the West.
It is already hard to say what this was, a hybrid attack or a direct assault. In this case, industrial military explosives were used to destroy a Ukrainian aircraft on German territory. And how to classify this incident is already a political decision. Let me put it this way, if it can be proven that Russia or another state is behind this attack, then it could be considered an attack on Germany or even NATO. After all, the Ukrainian Antonovs, which are currently based in Leipzig, were transporting NATO cargo.
What definition Berlin will choose for this incident will become clear after the investigation is completed. For now, the German government has decided to strengthen protection against drones, in particular by doubling the number of staff in the Joint Drone Countermeasure Center and doubling its network of operational support points.